Everyone, today we will be learning about cells, the building blocks of life. Cells are the very basic unit of life. They're roughly divided into two groups, eukaryotes and prokaryotes, where eukaryotes have a nuclear envelope around their DNA. Their DNA is contained in a nucleus. However, in prokaryotics, there is no nucleus and their DNA is in the cytoplasm. However, with developments in research, we've now discovered that they are actually divided into three groups, which is the eukaryotics, archaea, and bacteria, which is shown here. We can see the animal cells and plant cells are in the eukaryotics, and then we have the archaea branches and bacteria branches over here. You only need to know and focus on animal cell, plant cell, and a bacterium cell. So here is an animal cell which is labeled organelles, and the organelles in red are the ones we need to focus on. Starting from the plasma membrane, which is also known as the cell surface membrane or cell membrane sometimes. So this is the very outer layer of the cell, which is made of a phospholipid bilayer, and this is what controls the movement of substances in and out of the cell. That's its primary role and function. Moving up, the next organelle is the nucleus. So the nucleus is the site where the genetic material is. So the nucleus contains the genetic material or DNA of the cell. Then the next one is rough endoplasmic reticulum. And then you'll see that there's another one which is called a smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So these are a series of membranes, and the rough endoplasmic reticulum has ribosomes attached to it, whereas the smooth one doesn't. There's also ribosomes, free ribosomes in the cytoplasm, and ribosomes are responsible for protein synthesis for the cell. And then there's also a Golgi apparatus. A Golgi apparatus is responsible for any modifications on the proteins made or any packaging and storing of the proteins for eventual secretions. And the other organelle here mentioned in red is mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, which produces energy for the cell in form of ATP with the use of oxygen in aerobic respiration. So the next organelle is lysosomes. So lysosomes are membrane-bound vesicles that have enzymes in them, which are called lysozymes. So these enzymes are responsible for degrading any cellular waste in the cell. So any cellular waste would be engulfed by these vesicles and would be degraded. Vacuole here is also labeled in red. However, vacuoles aren't very common in animal cells. They are more common in plant cells. Plant cell, it has many of the same organelles as the animal cell previously mentioned. However, there are some differences which we'll point out. First of all, on top of having a cell membrane, it also has a cell wall, which helps strengthen the cell and also helps retain its shape. We also have another organelle called chloroplast, which is responsible for photosynthesis. So chloroplast has a green pigment in it called chlorophyll, which traps sunlight for photosynthesis. Also, here you can see the vacuole. Vacuole contains cell sap in the plant cell, and it's responsible for maintaining water balance. So this is an overview of organelles present in cells, in animal cells and in plant cells. Now, as a human, we know that for survival, we have many different processes going on throughout our body, and these processes are mediated by specialized cells. Now, these specialized cells are cells that are structurally different from one another to carry out their functions. So for example, over here, there are examples of various different cells present in our body, in different parts of our body, in different organ systems of our body to carry out certain functions. So a stem cell often differentiates into any of the specialized cells mentioned here so that it can then all come together to ensure the smooth running of our body. Now let's talk about these cells. So blood cells. Blood cells are flattened disc shaped and they don't have a nucleus, so they can carry more oxygen around the body. The next cell is the nerve cell. The nerve cell is an extended cell, so it can run through the body and allow the transmission of signal through from the peripheries of the body to the brain and vice versa. Now, the nerve cell has adapted pretty well because it has these dendritic ends, these branches at the ends, which allows it to contact and transmit signal to various different nerve cells. Also, nerve cells, which might not be clear here, have a myelin sheath which insulates it and allows faster transmission of the signal. Another cell here is the gametes, or otherwise known as the sex cells. The sperm is adapted such that it has a long tail to allow it to swim across to the egg cell for fertilization, and also the head is streamlined, which also helps with the swimming, and it contains enzymes that allows it to break into or digest into the egg cell. So now, as we can see here, specialized cell, for example, over here, a muscle cell, multiple muscle cells come together to form a tissue, and then multiple muscle tissue come together to form a organ, which or in this case is a heart. And then the heart with other vessels, blood vessels, is the part of a circulatory system, which from an organ, multiple organs together make a organ system, and then multiple organ systems make an organism. So circulatory system makes up a part of the body. These multiple human body systems seen over here. So we've talked about the circulatory system. We also have the nervous system, which contains the CNS, the central nervous system, i.e. the brain and the spinal cord, and all these nerves going down to the ends of the body, the hands and the feet. Then we have the respiratory system, which includes your lungs, your trachea, etc. And then moving on to the digestive system, it contains your stomach, your liver, small intestine, large intestine, and etc. And then we also lastly have the skeletal system and the muscular system. We can see over here all the individual organelles together. So the main important ones I've highlighted here. We've got the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, smooth and rough, which rough has the ribosomes attached to it, smooth it does not. Then we have the Golgi apparatus, the ribosomes. On its own, we have 3 ribosomes in the cytoplasm as well, the lysosomes and the mitochondria. And a quick run through the functions of these. So the nucleus contains the genetic material, endoplasmic reticulum with the ribosomes on them, and the 3 ribosomes are responsible for protein synthesis. Golgi apparatus is responsible for any post-modifications on the proteins, their packaging for secretion, and etc. And then the lysosomes are these vesicles, membrane-bound vesicles, which have lysozymes in them, and they are responsible for degrading any cellular waste. And then lastly, the mitochondria, which is responsible for producing energy in form of ATP for the cell to function. Moving on to the plant cell, we again have the Golgi apparatus, we have the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, and the mitochondria, which are all the same, have a chloroplast, which is different. Chloroplast, as we mentioned before, is a structure that contains a pigment called chlorophyll, which traps sunlight to carry out photosynthesis for the plant. The differences between an animal and plant cell mentioned here very clearly in the yellow color are the presence of a vacuole in the plant cell and cell wall and the chloroplast. We'll quickly go through the function of these 3. So the vacuole is present in this plant cell and is very rarely seen in animal cell, and even if there is, it's often very small. However, for plant cells, vacuole often takes up most of the space of the cell, and it is there to maintain water balance. Then we have the cell wall, which is to maintain the shape and provide strength to the cell. You can also see these tiny holes in the cell wall. These are called plasmodesmata. These are tiny openings that allow interaction with the neighboring cells. And then we have chloroplasts, which, like mentioned before, are there to carry out photosynthesis. So this was all of it for this lesson, and the key things to take away from this lesson are what organelles each cell has, and what's different between an animal cell and a plant cell, and how we have specialized cells in our body and how they are specialized for their jobs. A few examples will always help you with exam questions, and then also remembering how these cells become tissues and then organs, and then are in an organ system and eventually make an organism. And lastly, how we have multiple organ systems that make us a complete organism and allow our survival. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more.